Again, deliberate, selected targeting the BAPS Swaminarayan temple, the Shiva Vishnu temple, and now the ISKCON temple in Australia. And this is all ahead of the secessionists using foreign soil to wage a war or an agenda against Bharat. Why should this be allowed, and why are we taking it lying down? Why aren't we exercising the muscle and the might that is Bharat is the question that comes to mind. How can a friend, a nation like Australia, which is a part of Quad, allow this and just get away with lip service of commiserations and condemnations? Joining us now is Arjun Sakha Das, manager and priest of the ISKCON temple in Melbourne. Hare Krishna. Arjunji, Prabhu, can you please tell me what happened and how did you find out?
So basically, I started my worship today early morning, 4:15, and I was informed by another priest who came half an hour before me. So I am a resident monk, so I live in the temple, but he was coming from outside, so I had no idea what exactly happened outside. So he noticed and he saw all these religious vilifications, these hate speech remarks right at the front on our main temple wall, and that's how it was informed to us, and basically the community woke up with this nasty messages.
It's the third instance in 10 days. So why aren't the cops on alert? Why is this happening?
Looks like there is a group who is trying to seek attention, but they're choosing a very weird way of seeking attention, which is disturbing a lot of people.
No, but if they are trying to seek attention, why haven't the authorities caught them?
Yeah, so I had a couple of times I spoke to them today, and they were very supportive. They were ready to help. Evening, couple of officers came. They took the photos. They were making their reports. They wanted to check if any CCTV footages they can get from the neighborhood also. And because the remarks, the comments which are on the property are very similar to the previous temples as well.
Yes.
So naturally, it appears to be a common link. So they're trying to find some solutions together for all the issues. That's what we have heard from the authorities so far.
But do you think the authorities, the Australian government, should go beyond just these placatory tones and condemnations and verbal platitudes to build trust in the Hindu community?
Yeah, it's amazing. Their task force, this police force is pretty active. They're known to be very good. And it's been 11 days and there is no conclusion yet. So we are hoping that the local politicians and police can work together to provide a safe environment. Actually speaking, Melbourne is a relatively a very safe place, Australia in general. So we hope something better comes out of this. Otherwise, people just don't feel right, because when you're emotionally and spiritually invested in something and that place is attacked, people are very heartbroken. It was very outrageous what happened actually today.
Do you believe there is a deliberate design, and that too not just with Australia, globally, and something many are in denial about?
Means you can't be in denial, because in 11 days, if 3 places are attacked and with very similar pro-Khalistani remarks, now it's hard to say who exactly is doing it, because we all know things can happen, and to create rift between communities, politics is involved. It's very hard to say, to pinpoint exactly who is doing it, but that's the job of police. But what we can see is that you can't just deny that this hate speech is made and this vilification has happened. It's just undeniable.
No, but the attacks are not just theological, they're also secessionist in nature, the kind of messages. And both our nations share great equations, India and Australia. Why do you think this free run for anti-Hindu and anti-India vandals is being allowed in Australia?
Personally, in my experience and in our community's experience here, Australia is very pro in terms of supporting religious practices, especially in Melbourne. There's freedom of speech. We go out, we sing, chant on the streets, we chant God's names, we chant Krishna's names right on the street, and there has never been an issue. We have distributed thousands of plates of free food, and there's a lot of support we get from the local council, local government. So we don't see that that they are against in terms of their policies. It's just that the system has to come together and do something about it now.
Well, thank you. Thank you for speaking with us. And let's hope that this stops here and there is some hard action taken against these vandals. Abhishek Banerjee and Ramneek Singh Mann joining us even as we ask this very question straight up on a quick short debate. Free run for anti-Hindu vandals, and why is it being done? Not just anti-Hindu but anti-India vandals. Ramneek Singh Mann, the whole agenda of Bhindranwale and Hindustan Murdabad and Khalistan Zindabad being written at a temple is very layered. And why is this being allowed? Is it so difficult for them to catch these vandals? And they are allowing the chief vandal, a wanted terrorist, a blacklisted person in our country, center stage by letting him do press conferences, etc., and roam around Australia freely.
See, Anand, this has been a problem with the politicians both in the West as well as down under. Not just Australia, but also New Zealand, Canada, European countries. See, let's be very clear on this, that the Khalistani agenda is a brainchild of the Pakistan ISI. And the hate for India, the hate for Modi, and the hate for the Hindu-Sikh unity is coming out in the open. It's not just an attention-seeking method, like, the Pujari Sahib was saying. It is also a divisive agenda. They don't want to have Hindus going to Gurdwaras, and they don't want Sikhs going to Hindu temples. This is what their agenda is all about. It's about trying to wedge a difference between the two communities and then trying to, play on it, on the divisiveness. So this is also trying to extract a retaliation from the Hindu community. If there are any hotheads or, hardliners in the Hindu community, this is exactly what they want to do. And then if that happens, then they're going to play on it. And the politicians, unfortunately, in these countries have been working for the vote bank politics, as you would have seen in India many years ago. So this is something which needs to be tackled not just at the local level but also at a diplomatic level, where the Indian missions there or the government of India needs to put pressure on the local police or the local administration, the local governments of those countries to tackle these people with an iron fist, with an iron hand, because the repercussions of these events will actually follow through in India, not just overseas.
There are other temples too, and somewhere the messages, the handwriting is also the same. Even I can make out it's the same group of people who have done it, because if you put all the three pictures together, you'll see that the S's, the B's, the way it is written, it's all the same group. So Abhishek, why can't they catch? Freedom of speech in Australia also comes with restrictions. You cannot vilify, you cannot spread a hate campaign, and the message is secessionist. Is it so difficult for our High Commission to be able to impress that upon the Australian authorities? If their foreign ministry can take cognizance, if their politicians and ministers and government can condemn this act, then why can't they take cognizance of the message that it is secessionist? It's against the sovereignty of Bharat.
Yeah, Anand, Hindu-phobic attacks have been on the rise all across the world. We have seen it in Leicester. We are now seeing it in Australia. Few days back in the US, when Aruna Miller, she was sworn in on the Bhagavad Gita, there were chants of Hindu fascists stop encroaching on America. So it has been open season. But two quick points I want to make. One is that I think the left finds it very easy to attack Hindus because they have so many internal collaborators within India who are always ready to help them. You might remember that on the 20th anniversary of 9/11, they actually held a conference to warn the world about the danger of Hindutva. And the second observation that I will make is very chilling, is that mostly I have noticed that in recent days, they have resided, the anti-national forces are more and more using, instead of the jihadi rhetoric, they are using Khalistani rhetoric to attack India. Because they have realized this is another of our fault lines. And what they are trying to the Hindu-Sikh unity. And I should point out that this began at the time of the farmer protests, many so-called farmer protests. Many people pointed it out, but then they were shut up by name calling as Bhakt, IT Cell, Sanghi, and so on and so forth. This was a reality, and unfortunately, it began with the so-called farmer protests.
It began with there, but the fact is that why should we allow them to? This is like heads I win, tails you lose. Chitme jita pat tumhare, both ways they can play this game. We need to be assertive enough and say this is an agenda and it needs to be stopped. Imagine if somebody was running that agenda, a similar agenda against Australia on Indian soil and running amok, targeting churches or Australian institutions. Do you think they would have kept lying down about this, and they would have waited for 10 days and 3 institutions to be vandalized, Ramneek Singh Mann? This
the
is
problem
also this is also about us. How much we are asserting ourselves, the importance we lay on our sovereignty.
Well, yes, we can be more assertive, but diplomacy has its own ways of working. Not everything comes out in the open. That is one. Number two, as far as your question is concerned, that what if the churches were vandalized? Well, if churches were vandalized, you would have got reactions not just from one country, but over 100 Christian countries over the world. Now, India being, the only, let's say, homeland to Hindus. So there is limited response, but yes, I mean, there could have been a very, very strong response from the foreign ministry as well as the local missions in Australia. I somehow feel that there has to be some display of solidarity between the local Sikh community and the local Hindu community in Australia. They should come together and condemn it together. And till such time, the local authorities, the police, find out who these people are and what is the trail behind and where does it really, reach, what houses or what countries do they actually reach. Till such time, there should be some sort of a solidarity between the two communities, the Sikh community as well as the Hindu community in Australia. They should come together and put their foot forward against these vandalisms.
Somewhere, Abhishek, shouldn't these elements, these vandals, think twice before touching an institution that represents any part of Bharat?
Well, unless they get a hard-hitting response, they will not think twice.
Exactly.
Because this is the third incident in, let's say, 10 days. So there's nothing happened. So they try to test waters the first time, how deep the water is, how hot the water is, and then they go on forward.
No, it's not just about testing. We should just not allow them to wade in. He's a wanted man by India. He's listed as a terrorist under UAPA.
Extradition should be followed. Extradition should be followed through rigorously by the government authorities.
We should say if you are allowed him to enter Australian soil, hold him there and don't let him out. That should be the case, and we should make an example out of such elements. Thank you, Ramnik Mann and Abhishek Banerjee. Thank you for joining us. With that, we draw close to this edition of The Right Stand. Stay with us. Zaka ready with brass tacks.